Once we let go of that resistance, things can flow again. Nothing remains the same in our universe. Something's always changing. Nothing's static, right? Because everything is energy and everything is vibrating. So it's when it becomes, stagnation occurs, it has to move. And that's why sound is so powerful.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Monique Hitzman, and we are going to be talking about tuning forks and healing with sound. More about that in a second. First, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can listen to episodes, read synopses on the episodes, see photos of my guests, a little bio on myself. There's a donate button if you'd like to support the show that will also give you access to some extra content on Patreon. There's also a YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Add with Bob Nickman. You can listen to episodes on YouTube. And, of course, there is the Exploding Human Facebook page. Another place to listen. Appreciate that. As I said, my guest today is Monique Hitzman. And she has been working with sound for quite a while. She does sound baths and bowls and all that kind of stuff, but she has also studied tuning forks, which is a more targeted way of unblocking energy. She studied with Eileen McKusick, who has written a fantastic book called Tuning the Human Biofield, which I am almost finished reading. It's fantastic, and it really talks about how we are all made up of energy. The universe is made up of energy, which is vibration, and how using tuning forks can unblock, unstick, free up stuck energy for healing, not only physical, but emotional, and let's say spiritual. Why not? It's a pretty fascinating topic. I loved reading the book. I have had some tuning fork work done on myself, which I found really fascinating. I talk about that in the episode. Monique is a wonderful guest and explains it better than I ever could. And that's why she's the guest and I'm the host. So please, listen in. This is Monique Hitzman on tuning forks. Good morning, Monique, and thank you for doing the show. I really appreciate it.
Good morning, Bob. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and we were just talking before just about sound and vibrations and tuning forks in particular, which is why I contacted you in terms of talking about that. And you said something interesting because you also do sound baths, and you were saying that is more like a massage and that tuning forks are more like surgery.
Yes.
And I love that. So I want to start with that. First of all, most of the audience that I have is familiar with a lot of different healing modalities, but the tuning fork, which I just found out about this year, so I know it's been around a long time. Tell us about what the science behind that is a little bit, and also about some of the ways in which you use it with patients or clients. Let's use the word clients.
Clients, that's good. Well, the scientific basis behind it is all about vibration. And, that might sound unscientific, but as Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, you think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. Because everything in the world is vibrating. Everything, even, a rock is vibrating. And even in modern science, they use sound, sonograms, ultrasound, and also the most common way to get rid of a kidney stone is the lithotripsy machine. It's a sound wave that comes and breaks up the stone, and then you relieve it naturally. And that's the way the tuning forks work. So if you think in terms of vibration, we're vibrating. And we have a unique frequency. We're born just like we have a unique fingerprint. And that frequency gets kind of altered or lowered or damaged or stuck or blocked, whatever term you want to use, due to negative thinking, due to trauma, due to bad air, pollution, etc., right? And so the tuning forks, there's a concept called entrainment. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Well, I was reading. I was reading, as I told you, the Tuning the Human Biofield by Eileen McKusick, who you studied with, and she talks about it in that book. But I'm sure a lot of my listeners haven't heard about that, so I'm somewhat familiar. Yeah, but explain it, because it's a good thing to know.
I'll explain it because I started in sound healing with playing the harp for people who are sick and dying. That's how I started my whole journey. And for instance, if somebody's heart rate is really fast and too high, and if I play fast and then slow down my playing, their heart will match that and eventually slow down.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like when we are experiencing, we meet someone who has a lot of anxiety, and then they leave and we're like, oh my gosh, I've got all this anxiety. It's because it entrains, it affects us. So if you believe and you understand that, most modern science believes it, at least physics does, that there's a web. We're all connected to this electromagnetic web, right? And we have this bubble around us, this field. Science calls it a biofield. Other people call it an aura. And it's really plasma, not like the blood, but it's a gas. And we affect others and others affect us.
Mm-hmm.
So with the tuning fork, as you use it, your body and the tuning forks comes and again, the wave comes and breaks up these blocks and the stagnation and the congestion and creates the space for your body to release those blocks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's almost like vibrational scar tissue is how I'm seeing it. It's if the body's biofield is hurt in any way, or scarred or damaged, it gets the energy gets blocked and can't move in the natural way, like maybe the way you were born. And so by using sound to free those stuck areas, then it starts to flow in the way that it was meant to flow.
Exactly. And it brings you back to balance. So if you look at your field, right, which is about the extent of both arms out, and it's a timeline. That's the way Eileen teaches us. And at the outer edges is your ancestors. And then when you get in, it's when you're in your mother's womb. And then it's your birth, then your early childhood, and so forth. And the closer it is the more recent. So it's this timeline. So you had trouble with your birth, let's say, and there was no resolve. Where does that energy go? Right? It kind of gets stuck in there, and it can create certain physical symptoms. It's also part of a belief system. We carry the energy of our mothers. Let's say our mother was depressed while she was carrying us. So, I mean, it's still, it works in the same sense like in psychology. We carry generations of patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they believe that, and we believe it too, but we look at it in terms of vibrational patterns. So when the beautiful part of all of this is, as a practitioner, I don't have to figure anything out. So if someone comes to me and says they have this ailment or something other, whatever it is, I test the body through the chakras, whatever's blocked, including the 7 chakras, including the knees and the feet. And each one corresponds to an energy. So for instance, the right foot, if that's blocked, it's what you're feeling about your next steps forward. And I've been doing this for a while now, and it's, 99.9% accurate. Whenever I bring up, what I find, that person agrees.
People must go, how did you know that?
Exactly. And Eileen, she's the one who mapped it out. And she mapped it out as she was working and discovering that there were these commonalities for the chakras. And so what you do is an interesting part of it too, you start at the edge of the field, and then you take your fork and you comb in, and you can feel as you strike the tuning fork, the vibration entrains with the blocks, and you get all sorts of feelings. Sometimes it feels like cement, sometimes it feels like mud or a sponge, and then the tone changes. Like if someone had an accident or anxiety, it's a high pitch. Or if someone's sad or depressed, it's a low and melancholy sound. And so what the interesting thing is, you bring it back into the chakra, which I love this concept, because sometimes people say, well, just get rid of it, right? Why do you bring it back into the body? But as we understand, even again, from a psychological point of view, we have to integrate what's happened to us. We can't just make it go away. We can't purple wash it, as some people call it, okay. Right? So it's you bring it back in. So, and then you can feel it. You can feel the energy in the room. The person feels the lightness. It's almost sometimes someone's carrying this weight and they don't realize it all the time. They know something's wrong, but then you can feel it lift. And it's really quite extraordinary.
I'm very curious as to the process when somebody comes in. Do you, I don't necessarily, I guess maybe diagnose is the right word, what is going on? Not a medical diagnosis, but just a knowing of what's going on. Do you start by hitting a tuning fork and going from the outside of their field inward? And what part, is that how you do it with the fork, or do you do it some other way? And then how do you know which tuning fork to use? Because there's different frequencies. It seems like the training for that might take quite a while to master that, or at least master might not be the right word, to understand it in a way that you're best able to help somebody.
Yes, that's a good question, actually. Well, we use a main fork, 174. I'll let you hear it. And that's we call this the workhorse.
Would you like to know where I feel that?
Where?
Head and throat.
There you go. See that? And you feel it, and everyone feels it at different parts of the body where, something usually needs to be released. Sometimes there are joy spots.
Yeah.
But what it is we don't really necessarily have to diagnose anything. Like I said, the first thing I do is I use a pendulum, and I go over the chakras, and it tells me which is open and what is blocked. And usually, people have more than one chakra closed when they're coming for a session. Not always, but mostly. And so usually you work, if there's a lot of chakras on the top, you work on the bottom one. So the foot would come before usually the stomach area. But again, I'll use the pendulum to kind of decide and see where the body is telling me. So that's the beauty part. I'm not the expert. I go by what your body tells me. And then energetically, I will tell that person what that means. Now we have the our male and female sides, right? So the left brain controls the right side, which is the masculine side, and the right brain is the left side, which controls the feminine side. That also corresponds with the person's mother and father, and also their feminine and masculine qualities. So, for instance, if your third chakra is out on your feminine side, it's a sense of powerlessness. You're not fully in your power. We use this one fork at the beginning to start sweeping. Now, you wonder, like, there are people who use specific frequencies per chakra. You know, I've seen that. I know
Okay.
you can buy them, but we don't do that. There's definitely overtones. And this one is just I love this one. But I also use weighted forks. And sometimes the energy gets stuck, and I'll use my other frequencies. And then I also will go to the body with the weighted forks and in the field, because it needs more than just the sweep. Does that make sense?
So you're actually touching the fork to the body?
Yes, you use the weight. I'll show you the weighted fork, but you use it, you always activate it with a hockey puck. And then this one has to be an LA Kings one.
Okay, very nice. So you ding it on the hockey puck.
Yes, and then you put it on the body.
And you're putting not the fork end, but the solid end at the bottom. Is that what you're touching?
Or not the weighted part. Do you want me to show you the weighted fork?
Yeah, I want to see the difference. I know the people listening are not going to see it, but I'll try to explain what it looks like. I mean, we've all seen tuning forks. I guess we used them in science classes.
Right. You did, didn't you?
Yeah. So there looks like there's something on the end of the forks.
That's what makes it a weighted fork.
And what is that material?
I believe it's the same material as the fork.
Okay, so it's some sort of a metal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I put a crystal bottom on some of my weighted forks.
Okay.
But you don't have to. And so you strike it, and let's say you put it on we also do an opening sequence on the main parts of the body to get the energy flowing before I start the work.
This is just the most fascinating stuff. When I read the book, I was like, this makes so much sense to me. And, the examples of, why this is not woo-woo. I mean, there's obviously that component to it because it isn't mainstream in medicine. But when you think about how just listening to music changes how you feel, very simple. And then you were giving the examples of using sound to break up, calcium deposits. And, I guess they're getting some even more targeted surgeries using using sound, ultrasounds, of course. So it isn't out of nowhere. It's really just getting the knowledge of what each vibration means and how to get it moving again. How long did it take you to start to really figure out, to be able to start helping people? Was it pretty quick?
Well, I was a little bit nervous or apprehensive at the beginning to think, okay, because when Eileen taught the class, she would be like, okay, I feel this. I feel this, this big clump. And it's a timeline. So you can tell people, well, I feel this around 5 years old. And it's so amazing how many people go, oh my gosh, at 5, I had this trauma and blah, blah, blah. So I thought, am I going to be able to feel it?
Right. That's what I would wonder about. Like, how long does it take to?
It doesn't take very long. You don't have to be an intuitive, because you just have to listen and be present and be curious. You don't have to figure it out. You don't even have to describe what you feel. You can say, I feel a block. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of, we don't always stay on that age timeline, but that person will start to feel something in their body, like you did on your throat and your head. It starts, sometimes it gets super intense. I've had people shake on the table.
Well, I have to say that, when I meditate, I use different sound frequencies. I use, some solfeggio music sometimes, or sometimes I'll just use binaural beats, and I'll see what happens to my body. And I definitely have shaking reactions in different parts of my body. Sometimes I'll feel it. I'll move up and down, even like
Yeah.
my butt will go up and down, and I can't control it.
Right.
Or I'll feel it in my stomach, or, I'll make these, breathing exhales that I can't really, if I really sort of let it go and be super sensitive to the sounds, and my body will react. Though it's like energy discharge is how I see it.
It is exactly that. That's a really good way to explain it.
So that's why I'm so into this, because I've experienced it. And I will tell you that I did have 2 or 3 sessions with someone who, I don't know where she studied. She's moved away, but she came to my home, and she said, I have to do it in your home, because you're going to be so tired and floating and sleepy or whatever, that I don't want you to have to drive. I don't feel that that's safe. So she came to the house, and that's exactly what I experienced. I wasn't sleepy, but I couldn't move. Afterwards, I was clear. I was very aware, but my body was in this other sort of state of relaxation, where it wouldn't have been safe for me to drive.
I don't necessarily do it at someone's home.
Yeah.
But I give people enough time to make sure that they're safe to drive, because that is a concern. And there's also detox that can occur.
Okay. Give me an example of what that would be.
You feel nauseous. You go home, and let's say maybe you were dealing with some emotion, and you can continue to use one session is usually not enough for someone who really has a lot of blocks. So they continue to detox. And even if the one session is enough for someone, you can have, even though you feel clearer and lighter, you can have, and kind of flu-like symptoms. You don't want to go anywhere. So we always tell people to drink lots of water, to do grounding, to journal. Interesting enough, too, once in a while, some people don't feel that much during the session. And then they'll go home within 1 or 2 days, they feel more.
I don't know if they're resistant maybe during the session.
So,
but it's just powerful enough to actually have an effect.
And then one time I had someone, and I kept feeling a lot, and that person didn't feel anything. And I thought, oh, but I just continued to do what I do, and then they're just like, no, I don't feel anything. And I thought, oh my goodness. And then their body went into like tetanian, how it's like their fist got closed and their body got cramped and they couldn't move it.
Yeah, I've heard people have that when they do breath work. Sometimes they get when they do breath work, they get all cramped up. I've never seen that, but I've been to a couple classes of that, and he explained that could happen, but it didn't to anybody.
Yeah, it hasn't happened very often, just maybe one time in that kind of positioning. That person, even I had put a crystal in their hand because they weren't feeling very much, and I couldn't get the crystal out during that time.
I'm very interested in this because you mentioned trauma, and I always find that to be kind of the root of a lot of people's issues, physical and emotional issues. Have you ever worked on somebody who had a trauma, and as you're working on that, it reactivates the trauma and it doesn't actually help, right? And they're in a sense worse either at first, or you can't even work on them. The trauma is so strong.
Well, you actually asked really good questions, Bob. I'm actually in the process of getting a master's degree in psychology to become a therapist, a marriage and family therapist. And that's precisely one of the reasons why, is because how the trauma comes up. People have told me things they've never told other people. You know, someone who's 60 years old, something happened to them when they were 5, and they carry that their whole lives. One time early on, I had a client who, you know, people cry hard often, and that's good. Sometimes people throw up too during a session.
Yeah.
Which we want them to do because you're letting things out. But one person, I felt that she was getting re-traumatized. And like you said, she just, you know, she couldn't get out of that cycle. And so now I understand how to deal with it better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not trained as biofield tuners to really talk about trauma, but that's why I started to get more knowledge of how to deal with trauma, because I see it as, like you said, as one of the main reasons why people have blocks, and even physical ailments are tied to those traumatic events because they've never released them. So it is something to be, you know, we have ways to calm the person down and to make sure that they don't leave the house in that state. And this is the one I really love. It's the 528.
That was my eyes and my cheeks. I felt it.
So we call that the love frequency.
Oh, okay.
Some people call it the DNA repair.
Yeah, I've seen that on the when I meditate. That's one of the frequencies that is often used in the music.
And it has a really lovely, beautiful kind of heart chakra feeling to it. And so, like, you can call them each chakra with that to get people to feel more loved. And I also use instruments sometimes during my sessions, like these Koshi chimes.
Yeah, those are nice sounds. They make you feel happy.
Kind of feel cradled. Some crystals, if you want, placed on the body.
Can you work on yourself?
I work on myself nearly every day.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I do. And I check my chakras, and then I'll work on a chakra, you know, and comb it. And I test the chakra afterwards, and it's opened. And I also use it physically on my body. But I guess Eileen says something which is funny. She goes, it's like, yes, you can. It's like a foot massage. You can give yourself a foot massage, but it feels better when someone else does it.
It sure does. It really does. It's not going to hurt, but it's just not the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to work on myself. You know,
yeah.
Just why not, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if anything is, you know, that's how I sort of see meditation. It's, you know, I'm working on myself, you know.
Exactly.
Are there certain types of issues that are more prevalent in the people that come to you that people want to work on? Like, for example, you know, an emotional problem versus, I want to lose weight, or I've got headaches, or, you know, do you find a certain pattern more frequent?
I think really it's emotions between sadness, depression, and anxiety. I think and then digestive issues, which can be related to the anxiety or to depression as well. And then unresolved trauma, unresolved emotions, you know, and even with the anxiety and the depression, you know, some people can be clinically depressed, you know, have some brain issues, but it's usually associated with something in their lives and some sort of pattern.
Seems like the more I'm around alive and talking to people, that people have stuff that just they can't get rid of is maybe a way to put it. It's just like, this has been bothering me for 10 years, 15 years, since I was a kid. Sometimes you'll meet people that are very angry. And they just live with that sort of feeling of being disturbed and upset all the time. And people will say to them, why are you so angry all the time? And the answer is usually, I don't know. That's the way I am,
Right.
or well, I see things more clearly than you. And if you saw them as clearly as me, you'd be angry too.
Thank goodness you don't see that clearly.
Yeah.
Well, and even again, in psychology, what do is we don't necessarily get rid of that memory or where it came from. We make people aware of it, right? Making the unconscious conscious, and then shift their perspective and help them manage it better. So same with biofield tuning. Sometimes people aren't aware. They think, oh, I've been anxious my whole life, right? I don't know. It's just I'm an anxious person. But then you feel it in that timeline, or that you understand that their mother was just like that, and it is their perspective. It's a fear that they're looking at the first thing. So as a practitioner, we can only do so much, right? People have to be able to make that shift too, and to be willing to look at that. And sometimes people aren't. Sometimes people want to stay angry and they can be more comfortable in that way of living.
Yeah, there is a sort of truism to people that when they're upset or troubled or confused, that they go backwards to what they know rather than risk going forward. And I think sometimes, like the older people get, the less likely they are to want to change, because you'd have to say, oh my God, I've just wasted 30 years being this way I didn't need to be.
Yeah.
The ego would not like that.
No. And I think if we look at COVID, and all the changes that all of us has been through, you see people who are resisting that change, and that causes more problems. After realizing that once we let go of that resistance, things can flow again. Nothing remains the same in our universe. Something's always changing. Nothing's static, right? Because everything is energy and everything is vibrating. So it's when it becomes, stagnation occurs. It has to move, and that's why sound is so powerful.
I'm seeing sort of a image of a river that has clogged with sticks and mud, and then you go in there and you pull the sticks and the mud out, and the water can move.
Yes, exactly.
That's what it feels like. I think this, would probably be super helpful in like mental health and addiction recovery. That seems like it would be a really powerful tool in those areas, because there's a lot of sort of other types of, they do biofeedback and EMDR in a lot of those facilities now. And this would probably be super helpful because, a lot of people that have those issues had major traumas.
I did a lot of work with recovery. I usually did most of it with sound baths. I used to do weekly sound baths for a recovery house. It's extremely helpful because, again, you don't have to do anything. That person lies down. I just do the instruments and the vibrations, like you felt in your throat and your head and your eyes. Those instruments bring up these emotions, and they're different. Like the gong, sometimes it makes people angry.
I've had that reaction too sometimes. Yes. Yeah, mostly it's not that, but I have had
Right.
I'm like,
exactly.
Yeah, shut up. It's pissing me off.
I have one client, he came to like 5 sound baths, and it wasn't until the 5th one that he actually liked it. He hated it. He couldn't stand it. I mean, the first time I heard the gong was at a Kundalini class, and I felt like somebody threw me in cold water. With the recovery, it helps people kind of release things, maybe bring up some of the emotions, because again, the addiction, some people will say there's a biological thing to it, but, I really believe there's an emotional part, a big part of the emotions and situational that people are carrying, so it helps people get more in touch with themselves, which is to me, the most important part of the healing from addictions.
Yeah, I think it's it's got a lot of components to it. There is a physical addiction, and there's the mental obsession and spiritual missing piece. A spiritual malady. It's a lot of pieces, and I think some people have different areas of those stronger than the other ones. Some people have super sensitive physical addiction, and other people really are going at it from a point of soothing emotional problems and issues.
And I think you bring up a really good point, is that, all these alternative modalities, which they really shouldn't be called alternative modalities because they're ancient practices, they treat the whole body. I think Western medicine is fantastic, especially for emergency. You need medicine for acute pain, for acute issues. You need it. Heart attack, surgeries, even pharmaceuticals, but the long term, but you go to the lung doctor who doesn't really consider your spleen or your other issues. So with the sound and energy healing, we see the whole, the mental, the emotion, the spiritual, the physical. And with the sound healing, again, we don't have to figure it out, because the vibration is going to go where it needs to go. Like you just experienced it. I didn't even intend for it to go into your throat or your head or your eyes. That's where it went.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you felt it.
Yes.
So it's like the body, we're not taught about our bodies. A lot of us are taught that the body is for, the physical appearance for other people, but our body is our instrument.
Yeah.
The pain is telling us there's something not right. And
I always love this saying, the body never lies.
Yes.
So if something's happening, there's a truth there. So you can either look at it or not look at it. But if something's going on, body's not capable of lying. It just is reacting to what is happening. Yeah. Really happening.
And, when we have trauma, a lot of times what do? We disassociate, because it's too much for us to deal with. And maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, sure. I think in the moment, it probably is a really good thing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But then left untreated, it becomes a problem.
If somebody wants to get a hold of you to have a session or go do a sound bath, how do they do that?
They can, go to my website, lasoundhealing.com.
Okay.
Or email me, lasoundhealing@verizon.net. Or they can find my phone number on there. They can call me, send a pigeon.
Do a drive-by.
And, I work during the day, during the evenings, on the weekends, and I'm in Santa Monica.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do group sound baths on a weekly basis on the outside at yoga studios. I haven't done that since the pandemic.
And do you have any recommendations for people learning more about this and maybe learning how to do what you do? Because more people doing this would be the greatest thing ever, to have it very available.
Well, I'm really and so grateful that there are so many more people than when I started. I mean, it's international. People in Australia and England and, Jamaica. And so I would recommend Eileen McKusick's biofieldtuning.com. I would buy her book to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
You can also get information on my website, lasoundhealing.com, to understand, vibration. But like for you too, I would recommend taking a class, even if you're not going to be a practitioner, or which a lot of people do, they combine it with what they already do. One last quote I know that Eileen says that really resonated with me is that she said, since we're vibrational beings, it makes sense to use vibration to heal.
That's fantastic. We got to end with that quote. That is just too good. Yes. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. You asked really wonderful questions.
Oh, thank you. And good luck. And please contact Monique if you want to get some tuning forks or other types of sound healing. She does it all.
Yes. Thank you, Bob. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening in to The Exploding Human. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Again, I'd like to remind you to visit the website, theexplodinghuman.com, the YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, and there is the Exploding Human Facebook page. Big thanks to Monique Hitzman for her wonderful insight and knowledge on the subject of healing with tuning forks. Please visit her website and check out more about that topic if you're interested. Much appreciation. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.